decades, we've seen the Simpsons family perch their bums on their couch in every scenario possible. And for a long time, these couch gags were mostly light, fun and silly, but that's until October 2010 when we got something a whole lot darker. All of a sudden, the show famous for parodying us was now the one under the microscope, specifically Banksy's, an artist famous for graffitiing in the dead of night, brandishing the streets with political and satirical commentary. And to this very day, his identity remains a secret. A bit like someone else we know.
You're El Bardo? How is that possible?
Al Jean, Simpsons showrunner and producer, reached out to Banksy to storyboard a couch gag for the show, and the result? It was 1 minute and 43 seconds of pure introspective horror. It was a project that was as controversial off-screen as it was on-screen. There were censor issues, dramatic changes, and staff protests. Why? Well, let's get into it. So, in the opening of season 22's Moneybar, the family rushed to the couch as usual, but this time we zoom out to see a sweatshop full of workers in awful conditions. Rows and rows of them are all slaving over Simpsons animation cells which happen to be the only real colour in this warehouse of bleak misery. From here, the cells are then passed to a young boy who dips them into some kind of toxic liquid before then hanging them out to dry. And slowly, the warehouse evolves into being more of a cave, with human bones being dragged around by Banksy's trademark rat. Side note, this rat has a lot of meanings and is shown frequently in Banksy's work. Some even say that Banksy is the rat because he's a graffiti artist who appears in the dead of night under the cover of darkness, and he really produces an art style that is considered by many to be dirty, disgusting and a nuisance. Therefore, a very suitable animal to act as the spokesperson for the oppressed, and in this case, these workers. So journeying down, and we see more child labour as they're being made to push rows and rows of Simpsons merchandise. We then see the workers throw live cats into a wood chipper to fill out Bart's Simpson dolls, which are then loaded into a wagon and pulled by a very exhausted looking panda. This is before being packaged by a man who uses a literal dolphin's tongue to seal the boxes. Along the way, there's also a man punching holes in Simpsons DVDs using a unicorn's horn, which then collapses, weighed down by its own horrible misery. It's bleak, it's awful, and it's depressing as shit, which is shortly followed by... This juxtaposition of the bright whimsy of The Simpsons against Banksy's dark art style is something that Banksy has played into before. Like when he famously opened Dismaland in 2015, which was his warped version of Disneyland. This installation was displayed in Weston-super-Mare, England, and was presumed to criticise Disney and how it glosses over real-life issues. He did this by subverting Disney's culture of happy endings and fairy tales with Dismaland's depressing but arguably more realistic environment. This includes showing Cinderella suffering a car accident in her carriage, depressed employees forced to wear Mickey ears, and an orca performing from a toilet, which also criticised another big Florida park, SeaWorld. It seems to also criticise the commercialism of such theme parks and its mountains of meaningless merchandise by giving away wristbands like this. Also in 2006, Banksy planted a life-size Guantanamo Bay prisoner in Disneyland's Thunder Mountain, presumably again to bring real-life issues that juxtapose Disney's bubblegum image. But yeah, whereas Disney doesn't really confront these real-life issues, The Simpsons always have, like depression, immigration, the argument if we should medicate children, childhood abandonment issues, and even facing your own demise. Not to mention that they themselves have also taken aim at Disney.
I'm the mascot of an evil corporation.
Well, before Disney bought them anyway. So therefore, it only made sense that The Simpsons wanted to collaborate with an artist who also highlights these important issues, even if that meant using The Simpsons as a placeholder for that issue. The collaboration came about when executive producer Al Jean saw Banksy's 2010 film Exit Through the Gift Shop. He told the New York Times, "The concept in my mind was, what if this graffiti artist came in and tagged our main titles?" So he then tasked Simpsons cast and director Bonnie Piatilla to contact the anonymous artist through the film's producers and asked if he'd be interested in writing a main title for the show. And according to Jean, he sent back boards for pretty much what you saw, around 95%. The missing 5% was censored by Fox, which Al Jean said was for taste. But by looking at these original storyboards and comparing them to the couch-gag, Fox might not have been too happy about featuring Rupert Murdoch in the sweatshop as some kind of worker figurehead. As well as this, there was Banksy's downright racially offensive depictions of the workers, which I will expand on a bit later. But yes, otherwise it seems very much true to Banksy's original vision. Al Jean did still have some reservations though, but was reassured when Simpsons creator himself, Matt Groening, gave the idea his blessing and even tried to help make the sequence as close to Banksy's original storyboard as possible. But it made sense that Groening would like to do this because he became successful through his satirical comic Life in Hell, which did also deal with very dark issues too. However, some of the staff weren't so happy about the project, the Simpsons animators. In 2010, Time magazine spoke with Nelson Shin, a South Korean animation director who has worked on The Simpsons since it first aired in 1989. He expressed his deep shock when him and his team at ACOM were given the storyboards to animate. Now, ACOM, the animation company, were probably a staple in your Saturday morning TV routine without you even realising it. They were involved in not only the likes of The Simpsons, but Arthur, Animaniacs, Batman the Animated Series, X-Men, Gargoyles, and so many more.
What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
But after years of work, he and his staff raised a rare protest. They were offended by their careers being presented in this dungeon-like complex and how it made them look. He felt like it made them and their careers seem subpar. In reality, Shin and his team work in high-tech workshops in downtown Seoul. Shin told Time magazine, "If Banksy wants to criticize these things, I suggest that he learns more about them first." He and other South Korean animators felt Banksy's montage wasn't fair to their cosmopolitan industry. Despite this though, it was reported in this same article that animated shows like The Simpsons are developed overseas because of cheaper labour costs. And even though South Korea's wealth keeps wages high by regional standards, their animators still only make 1/3 of the salaries of their American counterparts, therefore earning the South Korean industry a reputation for pumping out episodes on tight deadlines at reasonable prices. Lee Hee-yang, also in Seoul and a former colorist for The Simpsons during the 1990s when wages were even lower and cartoons were crafted by hand, spoke out saying that she doesn't really understand the sweatshop fuss. Sometimes it was stressful, we worked up until 2 AM on deadline days, but on most days, it was just a normal job. So after first seeing these storyboards, Shin then complained to the executives, arguing that the content was excessive and offending, and so the sequence was lightened, but not nearly as much as he'd have liked. He also brought up how the original storyboard showed the animators wearing these pointed Vietnamese hats, which were then replaced with more generic caps resembling those of postal workers. And I really do empathise with the animation team here. Imagine getting to work and having to animate yourself in such a demeaning way. Especially when it's not true. It's so understandable how offensive this could come across, especially to the people who are actually doing the work to create it. Perhaps it would have been better if the storyboard was accompanied by a message from Banksy to make things a bit clearer, but as an anonymous artist whose aim is to provoke a response, it is easy to see how bad this communication must have been. However, despite the imagery and the themes being really dark, it is still a parody, not an overtly hilarious one, but a satirical jibe. The Simpsons DVD holes aren't being punched by unicorns in real life, but Simpson dolls are not stuffed with cats, and the Simpsons animators can attest to not working in these kinds of sweatshop conditions. And in response to the New York Times asking if the project made Al Jean reconsider their animation processes, he said, "None of the things Banksy depicts are true. That statement should be self-evident, but I will emphatically state it." Personally for me, I don't know how these processes work, but I would hope that in the future, if the animation team are the ones being presented in the episode, they at least would have a bit more of a voice. Personally, I saw this couch gag as more of a criticism of commercialism and mass production. It exposes the true human cost to produce all things Western society doesn't really give a second thought about. Because unfortunately, a lot of the brands we buy are produced in horrific conditions, like these kinds of sweatshops, but maybe without the unicorns. Maybe. But by placing The Simpsons as the subject, it makes this idea a bit lighter, a bit more obscured, a parody, something that The Simpsons is famous for. I mean, they did almost the exact same thing in the 1992 episode The Itchy and Scratchy Movie.
I'm here live in Korea to give you a first-hand look at how American cartoons are made.
But what do you think of this couch gag, and are you a fan of Banksy? Let me know in the comments below. Also, a huge thank you to my amazing patrons who support my channels every single day. If you would like to sign up to my Patreon and get early access to videos on Lydia Loves Timelines and The Simpsons Theory, then check out my Patreon link down below in the description.